Pucks with Haggs
is brought to you by Prize Picks.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe is the 170th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, so thank you very much for listening and tuning in. As always, I got my longtime friend and colleague, James Murphy, Jimmy Murphy to his friends over there beside me. Murph, why don't you tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend?
Yeah, still doing the eye test podcast Monday to Friday, 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern with Pierre Maguire. You can find us live on YouTube, on our YouTube channel there. And I am writing for RG Media at least once a week.
Yeah, check out RG Media and also check out the podcast with Pierre Maguire. It's fantastic. They have great guests. Make sure to check that one out. Sooner or later, I will find time in the schedule to be a guest on there, too. We're still working that out. But Murph, it's been awesome to come on my podcast, and I'm going to repay that favor. Speaking of favors, speaking of awesome, let's talk about our sponsor real quick, Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, Murph, a lot of stuff to get to. Let's delve into the win first and what happened last night, the latest first.
Mm-hmm.
Bruins have a third period outburst, score 3 goals, win 3-2, hold on at the end when Florida has pulled the goalie, and we've seen that movie play the other direction many, many times over the last few years. And really for the Bruins team, like this year, we've seen them crumble in that situation over and over again late in the game where a team makes a push and they just can't withstand it. Power play goal to start it all off. Pastrnak in the middle of everything again. Zadorov, huge fight with Sam Bennett right at the end of the game that was kind of cathartic in a lot of ways from what's been, the Florida Panthers just constantly beating on them and slapping them around the last couple of years and pretty much all this season. It did feel like that was a great answer last night for what we've seen most of this season against the Florida Panthers. And from a bigger scope, Murph, 2 games since the trade deadline against 2 very good teams in the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Florida Panthers. And the Bruins have looked good, and both of them looked very different from a lot of what they've looked like this year and have responded very well with this new mix of players and with the players that have been there kind of put on notice now that they better start, performing better or, more changes are coming.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm impressed with what I've seen. And I almost wonder now, is this team going to get into the wild card? Do they change the mix enough where all of a sudden now we see everybody was writing them off at the trade deadline, and now they're kind of a scrappy underdog that nobody expects to make it. And it's a different role than they've been in. And they've kind of taken to it the last couple of games.
Yeah, look, I mean, kudos to them. They've played great since the deadline in the face of adversity, in the face of losing some really mainstays in the lineup, Joe, and obviously the biggest one being Brad Marchand. And just there's a ton of built-in excuses for them to just sort of mail it in. Oh, hey, maybe even they want to try and get a lottery pick. Who knows? But, people forget these guys are proud athletes, and a lot of them are fighting for jobs for next year. And, Paul Maurice actually pointed that out to us yesterday, Joe, if you remember. And I know that's coach speak, and he's just trying to praise the other team and also, keep his team in line. But the Panthers clearly didn't heed his advice, and the Bruins pounced on it. Again, I think, and this is not to take anything away from the way the Bruins played, because I think they played a great game last night, even better than they did in Tampa. But I do think they caught 2 teams who were sleeping on them. For whatever reason. You can't be doing that at this time of year, no matter who you're playing. And I think we've had this conversation before, Joe, where teams like the Bruins right now that really, I know it sounds crazy to say because they're only 2 points out of a wild card spot, but I think they sort of are playing with that nothing to lose mentality, and the weight's been lifted off their shoulder.
Yep.
You're a favorite heading into those games against a team like the Bruins right now, or, the Canadians, teams like you're in trouble. You could get in trouble fast if you don't come into that game ready to go. And I think the Bruins are sensing that, and they're taking advantage of teams who are maybe overlooking them a bit. And, I thought, as we were just saying off the air, that Zadorov played arguably the best game he's played in a Bruins uniform. He was He was amazing, and it was great to see because, like you said, it's been frustrating, I think, for him and for the fans and for the team.
Yeah, and I mean, it what I was seeing last night pushed me to tweet out like, "Where the hell has this been?"
Yeah.
While it was going on at the end of the game, because like there's been so many opportunities this year where that team has had a chance to do things like they did last night, and time again they had come up short, shot themselves in the foot. Something crazy happens. They let up a bad goal. Like there are so many instances where they had not been able to respond. And you have to give Don Sweeney some credit here for making bold moves, for making sweeping moves, for really like doing what needed to be done. And now he's getting the response that he needed from the team. My question is, like, they responded after they fired Jim Montgomery. There's been a few times this
Right.
year where you've gotten short-term, like sort of adrenaline burst responses from this team. I'll be interested to see if they can sustain it from now through the rest of the regular season. They're going to have to if they want that wild card spot. Like they're obviously playing, and there was even more emotion, I'm sure, last night. Not only were they playing the Panthers, but Marchand was in the building and he was watching, and I'm sure that played into it as well. There was a lot of players. Pasternak missed post-game media availability with us because he had been out talking to Marchand in the hallway most of that time. And then he came back right in at the end, and a lot of the players were out there doing that. And I think it was pretty emotional for a lot of the Bruins players because he was back and because they never got a proper goodbye because Marchand was in Boston injured when the trade deadline was going down. So, there was a lot swirling on in that game that's not going to be there for a lot of the games moving forward. But I suspect that urgency and the energy that this team is playing with and the guys that want to put on a good impression and stick around, that's gonna stay and it's gonna be here for the final month of the season.
Yeah, and I think, like you just said at the end there, and I think it goes back to what I was saying before. Like when a coach gets fired, Joe, that's the coach getting fired, right? It's not a direct sort of threat to the players that they're in danger of losing their position on the team. But when they see a GM clean house, you haven't seen that in a while here in Boston. When they see a GM clean house with really notable leaders on the squad, Carlo, Coyle, Marchand, all in one full swoop like that, that raises the intenders there for the players saying, "Uh-oh, I could be next." Like if he can move Brad Marchand, he surely can move me. So, I think it sends a message that needed to be sent. And we'll see what happens going forward. When I'm stepping back and I'm looking at big picture, I know fans won't like this, but I think it's better if they slide the other way because they can get in a better draft position. If they're really doing a rebuild. But at the same time, I also think, and we've seen this before with some teams, young teams, it's good for the young players to get a taste of playing meaningful hockey and winning some of those meaningful hockey games down the stretch. So there's positives and negatives to both respects.
Well, a game like last night, to your point, is just outstanding for the growth and development of Mason Lohrei. Like, it stepped up, scored the game-tying goal, was played 20 minutes, was blocking shots, was creating things offensively, and he's been on the other side of it where he's given up the puck and it's turned into a game-winning goal, and he's had some rough moments this year. So to have that sort of like roller coaster going up too, where he's getting good moments, especially late in the year, and he's forced to play a bigger role with Charlie McAvoy and Hampus Lindholm not around. It's huge for players like that. And I continue to believe that, like, I'm sorry, I can't deny the talent that the kid has. Like, when I watch him play, I say to myself, this is going to be an impact player in the NHL. This is a guy that once he figures out some of the defensive stuff is going to be fantastic and is going to be a longtime member of the Boston Bruins and is really going to be a difference maker. He's the leader in points on the back end now for the Bruins this season. He's done an excellent job. He's had some ups and downs, but I give him in particular so much credit, and it speaks to his makeup that he has not backed down and stopped playing the way that he plays and he wants to play and he needs to play, even when the mistakes come, even when the bad results have come in games. He continues to take risks and he continues to try to make plays and he continues to do what he knows he's best at, creating offense and doing things. And it's kind of the same attitude that Pasternak has, where he's going to make some mistakes and things are going to happen, but he's going to continue that high wire act of high risk stuff to create plays, especially in the right times. It becomes a veteran thing where you pick your spots and you know when to do it, when not to do it within a game, and situationally. But like, I just watch him and I watch the way he continues to play and what he continues to do even after mistakes are made. And I say, this kid's got the mental makeup. He's got the physical skills. Like, he is turning into a very good player, and it's going to continue, I think, because he wants to be a great player.
Yeah. And Joe, I think it says a lot that the team, when you get a really a high-end prospect like him, I think a team needs to see everything you were just talking about there. They need to see that he's going to, he's going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
But he has the ability to learn on the fly and immediately correct those mistakes, listen in practice, apply what he learns in practice, that he can go in there and like a trial by fire, so to speak, to just go out there and learn on the job. Not every prospect has that. And that just, that says volumes about what the Bruins see in him, that they were willing to let him do that up here in the NHL as opposed to down in the AHL. And I think that's the difference between him and like and I know they're two different positions, but a difference between him and like a guy like Lysell. The Bruins just don't see him being able to handle the NHL pressure, physicality, workload, speed, and learn at the same time. So they're letting him learn his craft down there. We'll see how much longer he's going to be there. But I just think, I think he's done an amazing job of seizing the moment. And going back to what we were saying in the beginning here about now that these guys are gone, and it's sort of like, the Bruins are just basically telling these players, go out and play. I mean, we're probably not supposed to make the playoffs. If we do, awesome. So when you take that burden off, I think it helps a young kid like Lowry to excel.
No, it definitely does. And it's showing. And there's going to be ups and downs, but like, I think that's to be expected. But I love the confidence he continues to play with. Let's talk a little bit about the new guys. A couple in particular that I think have stood out. Casey Middlestat's been pretty good in these first couple of games. He's made some plays. You can see the skill level on the power play where he's a great passer. He's able to set guys up, and he's creative too. Like, some of the stuff that he does helps the puck movement on that power play big time. You can see it already. He sets up Pastrnak for the first power play goal in that game last night against Florida. And Yokoharu, I think, has also been very, very good. He had not super noticeable, just steady, moving the puck, not making a lot of mistakes, but playing 20 minutes a night and eating minutes like that. Those guys are invaluable. And for him to come in and play like that in the first couple of games has really, I think, helped the Bruins defensively too. So those guys in particular have been, I think, have really stood out. And Lauko, I thought, he created that play that led to the Lowry game-tying goal because he was just scratching and clawing for the puck. And he's just been a welcome guy. Like, it was funny talking to him the other day. Like, he had to
such a character.
He had to fly back to Minnesota in that off day between Tampa and the practice day yesterday. Yesterday. He or 2 days ago. He had to fly back to Tampa. I'm not Tampa, Minnesota, to pack up his stuff
on Sunday.
And then come back again after flying from Vancouver straight to Tampa to play that game. He was like death warmed over after the practice on Monday, and couldn't wait to just go to sleep after practice was over because he was just dead tired from like the planes, trains, and automobiles that was going on. And that also speaks to something Marshy was saying yesterday about having a whole new level of empathy for the guys that get traded and moved around a lot, because he didn't realize like how difficult that can be until he had to go through it. But I think a lot of the new guys, I think, have been impressive and have performed well. And some of them you're playing their way into being here for more than this year, I think, if they can continue to play well.
Yeah, well, you mentioned Middlestat there, Joe, and I think, when we look back on this trade deadline, when all is said and done, he's going to be the player where you really can give a true final grade on what Don Sweeney did there, because he's got a ton of skill. Nobody's doubting that. The problem is the knock from everyone, I know that has worked with him, his coaches, his teammates, scouts that watch him. It's just he lacks physicality, and sometimes he wears down in the grind of being an NHL center. And, you kind of look at what Colorado did with the way they revamped their center position. They brought in size. They brought in guys like, like Coyle that can grind, and he's really good in a 3C slot.
Yeah.
And it helped them, and it's already paying dividends. Or Nelson as well is a big guy. So I think if Middlestat can start to play a bit more physical and he can buy into the 200-foot game a little more, and I know fans hate hearing that, but it's true. I mean, that's what wins in the playoffs. He's going to be a solid pickup. And I think when all is said and done, that's going to be the deciding factor on how Don Sweeney did at this deadline. Yes, of course, those picks are going to make a difference, but a lot of those picks we're not going to see for 3, 4, 5 years down the line. So
Yep.
I'm just talking in the immediate 1 to 2 years from now. How did Don Sweeney do? It's going to depend on how Middlestat fits in.
Yeah, that Brad Marchand, if it be a first rounder, I think it's not until 2028. That's a long time from now to make the pick and for that player to actually play in the league. So
yeah. And I don't know about you, Joe, if you noticed, but I was talking to some scouts about this. Like, there were a lot more draft picks being used as collateral in trades than we've seen before.
Yeah.
And the feel they get is
the cap going up.
The cap going up, and also though, the next 2 drafts after the first round, it's a real crapshoot. So, and you're always going to find guys. That's what scouting's about. It's your job to find those guys, but the sure shots are really, the first rounds are really good, and then it kind of falls off. So I think that's why you saw a lot of 3rd, 4th, 5th rounders being tossed around so much.
Yeah, but even first rounders were getting thrown
That's
around
true.
a bit too,
Yeah.
and I think it's because the cap is going up, and now all of a sudden those draft picks aren't quite as valuable because teams aren't as strapped to the cap anymore,
And you don't have
and
to
don't
bring
feel
in
like they need them
DLCs.
to stay under the cap. The guys on the entry level deals,
Yep.
so at least that's the attitude now. Once they start spending that money, and all of a sudden they're against the cap again in a year or so, or
Yep.
then all of a sudden you'll see nobody want to trade their draft picks anymore. But it's definitely both, because I've heard the same thing you have, especially about this draft coming up.
Yep.
That it's not the most talented draft in the world. But like you say that now, and the scouts say that now, but you really don't know until 5 to 10 years down the line how star-studded or how talented these drafts really were. You're just judging it on what you see every day, and it goes into the state of hockey right now too. I feel like it's getting so expensive, especially in Canada and the US, that you're still seeing high-end players, but I think a lot of the really good athletes are getting priced out of hockey, unfortunately. And that's lessening the pool of players and athletes that you have playing the sport. And it is going to eventually cause, less talented players to be available, and less talented players to be still playing hockey at 18 years old, because it's so goddamn expensive.
Yep, it's true. And I mean, with the way, and I'm not trying to drag in the real world and be depressing, but it's a fact. I mean, the economy is not good in Canada or the US right now. And the further down that goes, you're right. It's families are not going to be able to afford to have their kids playing as much as they used to. I think, though, going back to a draft too, you make a good point. I mean, you don't know down the line. And if we knew how some players were going to be in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, then we would have known the Red Wings were going to be a dynasty, right? Because look at all the gems they got late in the draft. So it all comes down to scouting and developing, and that's the bottom line. But I do think we did see a little more than usual this year.
No doubt. I just hadn't gotten your thoughts on the deadline in general. What'd you think of what Don Sweeney did, the hauls they got back, the players they traded? The knee-jerk reaction is one thing on the day and right afterwards, but now that it's settled for a few days, what are your thoughts on the whole thing?
Well, I actually had sort of a transformation as it went on, Joe, as the day was going on. At first I'm like, what's going on here? What's he doing? And then he went on, and I was texting you. I'm like, he's getting fleeced. He's going to get fleeced. And I'm like, whoa, wait a second. And then you see what he's getting for Coyle, and you see what he got for Carlo. Carlo was a great deal. I know people hate that he sent them to Toronto, but it's a different world now. People say, how can you trade in your division like that? It's just a different world now. The teams do that all the time now. It could hurt you. It could come back to haunt you, but at the same time.
I'll say this, Murph. I have a feeling they are not afraid of Brandon Carlo coming back to haunt them, trading to Toronto. I think there's an element of not being afraid of going up against him, and maybe they will come to regret it. But I think that's my sense on their feel of it, trading him to a team like the Leafs that they might play in the playoffs.
When you saw you could get Minton in the first round, though, you have to do it.
Of course, you had to. But in general, though, part of the reason Brandon Carlo got traded, awesome guy, a very good leader, good all-around person, has had a very good career with the Bruins, was a really good second-round pick, like was one of the players in that 2015 draft that really like saved it for them when they kind of blew the first round. But like part of the reason he's getting traded is because he was one of those players that was out there in the final minutes of games and couldn't hold things down.
Agreed.
And was not and this year was just not a good year for him. And I think, he's at an age where when you start to have a little bit of an off year like he's having, you start to wonder if the best years are in the rear view rather than ahead. And, you put all that together, and I feel like the Bruins were not hesitant about moving him to a division rival like
totally
they might do some other teams.
What I'm saying, though, Joe, is I think out of a lot of players that were out there, and it proved to be right, he was going to get the best return because he's the type of player where I think you're absolutely right about the season he's been having. But now you put him in a cup contender that is missing little strategic positions there, roles in their lineup.
Yep.
They needed a top 4 guy that's going to eat up minutes. They needed another PK guy to go with Tanev when he gets healthy again. And I think it's a good situation for both him and the team, and that's why they were able to get that return. To other teams, he still had a lot of value. I know you don't see it this year here, but out there talking to scouts, he had a lot of value, and that's why he got that return. And I'm fine with them going interdivision. Like, you're right. I don't think when I say haunt him, he's not going to come back and haunt him directly. It'll be more like the Leafs beat them or something, and he eats up 25 minutes. But he's not like some forward or sniper who's going to score a hat trick against him in a game like that,
No, but even defensively, I'm not sure they're too worried about like him like holding down David Pastrnak. You know what I mean? Like, no, I just don't agree. I think that's part of the thinking in trading him there. And he was going to get a good return, to your point, like all the things you're mentioning, and he has term.
Yeah.
He still has term left. So like that value goes up. Same with Carlo. That's why they got a good return on Coyle. Yeah. Because he has term left on his contract too. So like you trade those kind of players that are useful and have value, you're going to get more back in return.
Yep.
So yeah, I agree with you. If you're going to do what the Bruins were thinking about doing and start trading those players, go all the way. Don't go half measures. Don't go halfway with it.
And this is long overdue. Yeah. This is long overdue, Haggs. I think you'll agree. I mean, I feel like, and I've said it, and you're going to probably call me crazy, but I just felt like when you knew Bergeron and Krejci were going to retire after they choked in the first round against Florida,
this was a
record-breaking season. I felt like this is the time. I know it looks crazy. You just had a record-breaking season, but I felt like they were dealing with fool's gold. And then they get a team last year who, to their credit, they worked hard and they overachieved and they pushed the eventual Stanley Cup champions to Game 6. And Swayman was amazing in those 2 playoff rounds. But I just felt like this has been long overdue. And if they don't do it soon, they're just going to be one of those mid teams for too long. And we've seen that so many times when you and I were growing up, with the Bruins just sort of being in that middle pack and just good enough to get Jacobs the first round gate, and boom, they're out in 1 round. And I think it's time. If it means no playoffs for a few years, that's going to be better down the road. It's time to really reset.
Yeah, and to your point, if you get stuck in the middle, it's hard to get out once you're really sort of entrenched there in the NHL. Before we go on, Murph, let's take a break and talk about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Join over 10 million users and get started today. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun, and it's super simple. Prize Picks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join over 10 million users and sign up today. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports. That is pretty cool. Combine your favorite hockey players with players from basketball, baseball, esports, and so much more. Here are some picks for this week. Tage Thompson, more than 19 minutes time on ice. Radko Gudas, less than 4 hits. That's right, Radko Gudas. I'm going to call you soft in your next game. You're not even going to get 4 hits. How do you like that? I can say that from the comfort of my office when I don't have to look at your massive cranium and big beard. Trevor Zegras, more than 1.5 shots on goal. You can now win it up to 1,000 times your money on Prize Picks. Prize Picks also offers Venmo, MasterCard, and Apple Pay for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, let's get into it, Murph. Brad Marchand, back at the Garden yesterday in a Florida Panthers uniform on the ice, going through line drills, line rushes, and things like that.
Tripping.
People were wondering if he was going to pull a miracle and play in that game last night. And I'm sure he really wanted to, but clearly not ready for it. Stepping on the puck and slamming into the boards with his shoulder probably didn't help matters at all either. If he was hoping to come back, but you could tell he was having fun. He's enjoying his time as a Florida Panther. He's enjoying being with the talent down there and being part of a team that he feels like has a legit chance to win the cup, and certainly they do. And from the Bruins end, everybody talks about, oh, he just got traded for a second-round pick. I think it's a 90% chance the Florida Panthers are going to win 2 rounds and Marchand's going to play in half the games, and it's going to turn into a first-round pick. Those are very easy conditions to meet as far as the actual deal goes. But Marchand talked for over 20 minutes with us after practice, was emotional at times, especially when I asked him about his message to fans, what he would say to them. The fans are upset about him getting traded. He definitely takes that stuff to heart, and you can tell he's still having a hard time sort of processing the whole situation. It was interesting when he was asked about closing the door on the Bruins and free agency and coming back this summer. He kind of said that he hasn't really thought about it. But he also said, my love for the city and the will to want to be here has never changed. I don't think it ever will change. It's just whether it can have a meeting of the minds and come together, but to be seen. Definitely not closing the door.
No.
You hear reports that, he wanted 7.5. They were offering 6.3. It's about, $1.2 million difference. He wanted an in-person meeting with Sweens. He was offering to meet in the middle. The Bruins weren't budging. I think at that point they'd probably decided they were just going to sell off a bunch of players and collect the picks, and didn't want, frankly, to sign him probably at that point. But do you think there's a chance that they could reunite this summer, especially with Marchand being so open as he was to talking about wanting to come back and the emotions that he's with wanting to come back? Would it be good for the Bruins for him to come back at this point? And sort of be the presence that he's always been, if they sort of want to move on to another chapter? Would it be best for both sides if he did go somewhere else? The whole thing is really interesting and complicated, and there's no easy answer.
I look at it like this. Remember that scene in Dumb and Dumber when he says, what's the chances we could end up together? That's how I look at it. So you're saying, 1 in a million. No, I look, God bless Brad Marchand for all he did for this franchise. He'll go up to the rafters. He's a future Hall of Famer. And I love that he still wants to help this team, and that that he's leaving that door open. And I love how much this city means to him. But at the same time, if the Bruins are truly going to turn over a new chapter here, then do it. Don't hold on to the past. I think you need a clean slate right now. And, we started this podcast off talking about the young kids and them starting to find their roles and play with a little less burden on. I think it's time to see, you can really see that now without him, what guys will emerge into leaders, right? Because they always had that cushion to fall back on when you have a guy like him, or you had a guy like Coyle, you had a guy like Carlo. Those guys are gone now, and those roles are open for the taking. And I don't think you can really turn over a new leaf if you bring back some of the past. Would it be a great, storybook ending? Yeah, it'd be cool. But I honestly think, Joe, if he goes down there and he gets healthy and they go on a cup run and maybe they win back to back or they make it to the final, and he's living down there in sunny Florida. Yeah. He's not paying taxes like he is here in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
He ain't coming back. I just, he's speaking through raw emotion right now, but when he has a chance to sit back, and he's going to have some time, right? Because he's still going to be out recovering. Yeah. So he's going to have some time, I think, when he's on the road in the hotel room to just think about things and take a step back and be objective. I think he's going to realize, wow, there's a whole other world out there that I've never seen. Good for him to go explore it. So I would say 80% he's not coming back.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. And I do think what's going to happen, you're totally right, is that being with another team, seeing how another organization operates, starting to think about the possibilities, he's going to start thinking about other destinations, other, things he might be able to do. Maybe he can sign with Colorado and play with his buddy McKinnon, or sign in Pittsburgh and play with Sid. There's a lot of different things that I think are going to be on the table for him, and a lot of possibilities that I think are going to be really attractive for him that he might want to pursue. Now, Is he going to get 3 years, 7.5 million as a
No,
37-year-old? I don't think so.
no.
Good on him for trying to get that and trying to use his leverage to get it if he thought he had it. But if that's what he wanted and he wasn't really moving off of that, like I'm surprised the Bruins even offered him what he was making or a little bit of a raise of what he was making before, considering he's entering definitely the twilight of his career where like he's starting to get more injured.
Mhm.
You can see that he's not quite as, he doesn't have, he maybe has lost half a step. It's certainly, you see that happens when he's played a lot of games, like he starts to wear down more than he had before and the speed isn't quite what it used to be in the explosiveness. Even 3 years, 6 million, I think is a good value for a player that age if he gets
Yeah.
that free agency.
Yeah. There was an interesting part, Joe. I don't have it. I didn't transcribe it, but I remember during the press conference yesterday, somebody had brought up the contract and then going for, I think it was in that same conversation that you're talking about, where he didn't say no to coming back.
Yeah.
But he said, and it goes against all the reports we've heard. He said the term was the most important thing to him, which I would think, being at that age, you want to get term. And it just kind of went against all the other reports we said there. And now, I'm thinking back to that as you're talking here. And like you said, he's going to be really lucky to find 3 years anywhere going forward. I think he's kind of looking, and this is not a knock on him by any means, but it's just the reality of the game, the reality of, Father Time is that he's probably looking more at like a 2-year match or even just going year by year, extending or whatever. And in terms of the future, though, another thing I was just thinking as you're talking there, Joe, is he's going back. He's going to Florida. 2 of his best buddies from the 11 Cup team there, Gregory Campbell, Sean Thornton.
Yep.
Maybe even during this time when he's not playing and he has time to kind of catch up with them. Who knows? He might start seeing himself what he's going to do after his career. He might look through their eyes and say, this is pretty cool what they're doing. I'm interested in this. I could do hockey management. I could do this. Maybe I want to coach. So I think all these factors are going to start to go through his head. And that's why I just don't think he's coming back here as a player. But who knows? Maybe down the line, he's part of the management group or the coaching staff. You never know.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting possibility. And he's at an age where I think that certainly is going to start entering his head. But you also wonder, like, guys that have made as much money as him that don't need to coach or don't need to really be involved sometimes decide they just don't feel like, they enjoy retired life and they don't want the day-to-day grind anymore. Yeah. Well, yes, but I think at some point,
I think the itch is going to come back.
Bergey's going to want to get involved. I don't think he's there yet, but I think somewhere down the line, he's going to be interested in getting more hands-on with that stuff.
Yeah.
I think at some point.
And it's always going to be there for him if he wants to.
Oh, yeah, of course it will. But like his kids are so young right now that I think he's really enjoying just being like a huge factor in their lives and being involved. And good for him. No shock, no spoiler alert, no shocker. Patrice Bergeron's a great dad. All right, let's answer a few fan questions that were left over from the mailbag I didn't get to last week. The Bitter Man TBM on Twitter says this only ends one way, with Brad Marchand signing with the Montreal Canadiens in the summer. I think we can safely say there is 0% chance of that happening, right, Murph?
Yeah, I don't think that's happening. I think, the Canadiens, I'll just tell you because I'm tied in up there and we talk about them a lot on the eye test, and because our company that we work with, Sick Media, is based out of Montreal. So I've been following them a lot. They're going to keep trying to get, I wouldn't say younger, but they're under 30. They want to stay. They're looking for second line center. They want another right shot defenseman for their top 4. He does not fit what they need right now. And I don't think he'd go there anyways.
Excellent. I agree with you. He's not going to the Canadiens.
Yeah. And by the way, going back to no tax, you're going to go from Florida to Quebec. You know how much tax there is there? It's like, no way.
No, well, that's a definite factor for like free agents going to Canadian landing spots.
They got to get their guys via trades.
No question about it. Scotty Blanchard says, good morning, Joe. I used to watch you when you're on TV. I really enjoy reading, and I'm still on the NHL Network sometimes, but definitely not on NBC anymore, which I got to be honest with you, Murph. Like, I'm okay with that 100%. It's nice not having to wear a suit all the time when you go to the rink and being there for like 3 hours after the game is over, waiting to do a live shot. Not upset about that in any way, shape, or form. I really enjoy reading all these different things on your page. Have a great day. Sad about the Bruins. Maybe they'll finally clean up their act. We'll see. Thanks for always sticking with them. I mean, Murph, there was like, it's funny. I think I was a little numb or forgot how much of a big deal this was going to be to the fans, all these players getting traded. They loved Charlie Coyle. They loved Brandon Carlo. They absolutely loved Brad Marchand. We hear a lot from the lunatic fringe on the social media that wants to blow it up, trade everybody, fire everybody, like the extreme people. But that's the minority, the vocal minority, big time. The vast majority of people I know have been really upset that these players have been traded. They were mad at the Bruins front office. Like, it started to turn last night. You could see the fans in that building watching what happened in the third period and watching that team fight and scrap and claw. Like, it's turning the tide a little bit about what they're thinking about the deadline and what happened.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still a lot of fans upset that the jerseys that they're wearing to the TD Garden for the Bruins games now don't have players that are actually playing on the ice wearing them anymore.
Well, I think it goes on a bigger scale, Joe, just being a Boston sports fan in general right now. I mean, you've been so spoiled for so many years now with the Patriots, the Red Sox, the Celtics, and the Bruins, just always competing for titles and winning them. It's like a lot of that all of a sudden has been pulled out from underneath them, and the tide's turning and the cycle's going back the other way. So if I'm a fan, it's hard to deal with. But what I like what you just said there, and I hope there's more of that. I also think that a real sports fan that understands the economics of it just understands that sooner or later these things end, and you have to reset a bit. And there's ways, to reset fast and to get better fast if ownership and the management are committed to it. So, to be determined, don't judge it yet. And so I know it's tough right now, but I'd urge fans to just be a little patient out there. You've had a good run. I think if you look at all the major sports markets in North America, Boston's been the most blessed for the last 20 or 25 years. So it happens. It's something you got to deal with every once in a while, and that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, definitely. And there's extenuating circumstances. Like Charlie Coyle's a Weymouth kid. He's a Massachusetts kid. I think there's a lot of pride when the local kids play for the Bruins. So there's that element of it. I'm bummed that I don't get, I loved talking to Carlo, Coyle, Freddie, Marchand. Those were probably my favorite guys to chat up in the locker room and just shoot the crap with. Charlie Coyle was living in Newton, so I would give him recommendations on where to go to restaurants and stuff like that. That part I'm personally going to miss because I was close with all those guys and they'd been there a long time and they were just good people. And you hate to see people like that have to move on. And I think that's spilled over into, the fans and the way they feel is the fact that Coyle was a local guy and the fact that Brad Marchand's the last link active player link to the 2011 Stanley Cup team. And really it's truly a different page that's been turned.
I feel old. It's made me feel old, Joe. I'll tell you that. It's like,
dude, it totally makes me feel old when Marchand's going to be close to retirement soon. He's old enough to have left after playing 16 years here. And I remember being with him in Prague and him wearing a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hat that friggin' never made it back from Europe because Claude Julien probably lit it on fire and threw it in a trash barrel somewhere. Because he's like, who the hell is this kid wearing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle hats on the team flying the premier games in Europe? So all of that stuff.
I remember some other things when he was a Black Ace too. But just to see, exactly. But to see the career arc of that guy and to have seen it from beginning to end now, and Patrice Bergeron too, for that matter. Yeah, because we were both there when he first started out as an 18-year-old kid. that was shy and unsure. Remember when he got hurt? When he suffered that concussion, you didn't know if he was ever going to play again. I mean, and you look at the career he had after. So for fans too, we can connect to you because we watch these guys grow up and they're gone, and that's it. And like I said, it's just every once in a while you got to go through this cycle again and turn it over. And that's why, going back to what I'm saying, it's no knock on Marchand. Do I think he can still help the team? Of course he can. Yeah. But I don't. If you're really going into a new era, then go into a new era. Don't hold on to the past.
One more here. Crazy day, but I think Sweeney made the tough right calls. Brad Marchand was underpaid. Bruins signed him to a great deal years ago. He should be getting a 3-year deal for $8 or $9 million a year. Boston would have been foolish to sign him in a rebuild. I still hope he gets paid. And that's from James Dellon, 49,472. He is not going to get 3 years, $8 or $9 million on the market, but
if he is, good for him.
but I mean, that was, I'm sure, part of it on his end too, right? Is that he signed team-friendly deals, and he felt like the Bruins maybe had owed him one, in this last one to give him a little bit more of what he wanted. But, like, that's just how the game is played.
If you're thinking, like, the other thing I wanted to, Joe, and he's never going to say it, but I wonder how he felt about the Lindholm and Zadorov.
Yeah.
And
Totally. Especially the Lindholm one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Seeing them get that money.
Yes.
And knowing that he can still play just as good as them, if not better at times. That had a sting.
Well, and he mentioned something yesterday. He alluded to, like, the guys that they've signed to contracts, and he mentioned something about that. And he definitely, that was not accidental. And I think that was a big part of it is, hey, you're paying this guy Lindholm this much money and you're not going to pay me that much. I should be getting paid much closer to that guy, or, as much or more. I think that was a big factor too, for
That's
sure.
him probably looking at saying too, like, okay, so you're saying you're resetting here and that's why you need to move on from me, but yet you just brought in these, early 30 guys at this number. That doesn't seem like a reset to me. It seems like you don't know which way you're going, and like, well, then why can't I get my money? I don't know. Like, right. I'm not speaking for him. That's just the way I see it from the outside.
No, I think you're bang on. I think the Elias Lindholm contract absolutely played into what he wanted, what he was asking for. And, frankly, I think probably the Jeremy Swayman contract negotiations and him doing what he did and finally getting what he wanted and what he was looking for. Maybe Marchand thought he could kind of do the same thing and push Sweens around a little bit. And it was incumbent upon Sweens to, stand firm and not, buckle and not give in.
Yeah.
If he wants to win negotiations, or if he wants to get like a fair negotiation, a fair conversation going between the two sides, and not be looked at as any level of a pushover. It was a very different situation with Swayman. They were kind of over a barrel at that point once they traded Ullmark. So he was in a really tough negotiating spot. Very different situation with Marchand. But I got to imagine that there was a lot of pressure on Bruins management and a lot of unwillingness to bend because they couldn't do it after the Swayman deal.
Yeah, and he probably looks at it and saying like, hey, I never held out like that with you. Right. I never dragged you through the mud like that.
Right.
And whether they want to say they did their best to keep it quiet, a lot of stuff came out. Let's be real here. And, I think you'd agree with me, Joe, that, if that holdout doesn't happen, we may not be having this conversation at all. And Brad Marchand's still a Bruin. They're in a playoff spot. I think that was such a dark cloud over that team as that season started, that they just never. And and you factor in with Montgomery being a lame duck, you put those two together. They were behind the 8 ball right away.
Yeah, they were, and all that stuff I think played into what had to happen at the trade deadline. Because those things went the way that they did. It was too hard to, reverse course or to not come to the admissions that they did based on where the season's at. And that will make it a somewhat of a miracle here if they do make the playoffs here at the end, and they, this scrappy underdog story, if they're able to make it. It'll be really interesting. There was somebody I forget who it was, one of the Toronto, the Maple Leafs writers last night tweeted out something like this. This would be pure Bruins for the Bruins now to have a fire sale at the trade deadline and then end up making the playoffs and play the Leafs and probably eliminate them in the postseason. Yeah. Like that whole thing it's setting up for like something like that, which would be freaking hilarious. All right. Murph, thank you very much for joining us. Let's thank our sponsors. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Jimmy Murphy, thanks for joining us, my friend.
Always a pleasure, Haggs. We'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Everybody else out there, thanks for listening. We'll see you at the ring.